On a summer night in 1972, the world watched two legends collide, Bruce Lee versus Chuck Norris, the fight that would define a generation. But what the cameras didn't capture was a secret that would change everything. Picture this: the Roman Colosseum. 2,000 years of history bearing witness. Floodlights cutting through the Mediterranean darkness. A film crew that has no idea they're documenting something far more significant than a movie fight scene. That chest hair. That moment. The one that became a meme. Bruce Lee reaching forward, gripping a handful of Chuck Norris's chest hair, and ripping it out with a savage grin. You thought it was improvisation. You thought it was a joke. You thought it was Bruce being Bruce. Unpredictable, playful, breaking the rules. You were wrong. Rome, June 1972. The Eternal City is about to witness something it hasn't seen in 2,000 years: gladiatorial combat. But this time, the warriors aren't slaves fighting for their freedom. They're martial artists fighting for something far more valuable. The air tastes of espresso and diesel exhaust. Vespas weave through traffic near the Piazza Venezia. The ancient Colosseum has been transformed into a film set. Arc lights tower over the arena floor. Electrical cables snake through corridors where lions once paced. The production of Way of the Dragon is behind schedule and over budget. Bruce Lee is doing everything: writing, directing, starring, choreographing. This film has to prove that he doesn't need Hollywood, that he doesn't need anyone. Bruce Lee was at the height of his power. After the explosive success of The Big Boss and Fist of Fury in Asia, he had returned to his passion project, the final battle against the undefeated American karate champion Chuck Norris, filmed inside the Roman Colosseum itself. On paper, this was a dream matchup. Bruce Lee, the 135-pound philosopher of violence, trained in Wing Chun, boxing, and his own revolutionary system, Jeet Kune Do. Chuck Norris, the 180-pound juggernaut, 6-time undefeated world middleweight karate champion. But what happened between these two men went far beyond cinema. Their friendship began in 1968, 4 years before the Colosseum, 4 years before the Pact. And to understand what happened in Rome, we need to go back to a smoky dojo in Los Angeles. Bruce Lee didn't just teach Chuck Norris how to kick. He taught him how to think. Chuck was a traditional karateka: rigid forms, predictable patterns, honor codes carved in stone. Bruce shattered all of it. The training sessions took place in Bruce's garage in Bel Air, a cramped space that smelled of sweat and tiger balm. No mats, no safety equipment, just a heavy bag, a wooden dummy, and two men searching for truth through violence. Chuck would arrive at dawn. "Show me your kata," Bruce would say, and Chuck would demonstrate the precise movements of traditional Shotokan, perfect form, tournament-level execution, and Bruce would shake his head. "You're dancing. You're performing for judges who aren't there. In a real fight, no one gives you points for good form." Then Bruce would attack. No warning, no courtesy, just an explosion of motion. And Chuck, with all his championship experience, would find himself off balance, his techniques useless against an opponent who moved like water. "Classical forms," Lee told him, "are like a man trying to swim on dry land. In real combat, there is no pattern, only what works." Chuck listened, and in listening, he became dangerous. He started questioning everything his instructors had taught him. Bruce didn't have all the answers, but he had the right questions. But Bruce didn't just transform Chuck physically. He introduced him to a world Chuck didn't know existed: the Shadow Dragons, a brotherhood that had existed in secret for over 400 years. Its members, the most skilled martial artists in the world. Its purpose: to preserve the ancient combat arts and ensure they were never corrupted by outsiders. The organization traces its lineage to 1644, the fall of the Ming dynasty. When Manchu invaders conquered China, loyalist generals went underground, taking with them the imperial fighting systems. These weren't tournament styles. These were battlefield techniques designed to kill efficiently, quietly, without mercy. By the 1960s, the organization had cells in every major Chinatown across the globe: San Francisco, Vancouver, London, Manila. They operated through seemingly legitimate martial arts schools, but their true function was preservation and enforcement. When a master broke the code, teaching forbidden techniques to non-Chinese students, the shadow dragons intervened, sometimes with warnings, but sometimes the intervention was permanent. Bruce Lee was not just a member. He was being groomed as its next leader. But there was a problem. Bruce Lee had violated the most sacred rule of the Shadow Dragons. He had taught a Westerner. He had taught Chuck Norris. By 1972, Bruce Lee was a hunted man. After his fight with Wong Jackman in San Francisco, a fight that should have ended his career, but instead birthed Jeet Kune Do, Lee had become a symbol of defiance, and to the traditionalists, a symbol of betrayal. Let's rewind to 1964, Oakland, California. Bruce had opened his Jun Fan Gung Fu Institute and was teaching anyone who walked through the door: white students, black students. This was revolutionary. This was heresy. Wong Jackman delivered a challenge. The terms: if Bruce lost, he would close his school. If he won, he could do whatever he wanted. Bruce won, but winning that fight made him a marked man. According to documents that surfaced decades later, documents many still consider fabrications, the elders of the Shadow Dragons issued a death sentence on Bruce Lee in 1971. The method: traditional. The timeline: 1 year. Lee would not live to see 1973. But killing Bruce Lee wasn't as simple as a bullet. It had to look natural. It had to preserve the honor of the Brotherhood. And so the elders chose a method that had been perfected over centuries: dim sak dok, the touch of death, a neurotoxin derived from the venom glands of the Asian giant hornet, mixed with extract from the manchineel tree, known as the Tree of Death. The manchineel is so poisonous that standing under it during rain can cause blisters. Its sap can blind. Its fruit can kill. The poison doesn't kill immediately. It attacks the nervous system slowly, causing seizures, cerebral edema, and eventually death. To any doctor, it looks like natural causes: a brain aneurysm, a reaction to medication, the perfect murder. The assassin selected was known only as Chen. He had eliminated 7 targets over 15 years. All deaths ruled natural. All investigations closed without suspects. And the assassin was already in Rome, already embedded in the film crew. To understand what happened next, we need to understand the science of assassination. This isn't Hollywood. This is biochemistry. Dim sak dok works by targeting the voltage-gated sodium channels in your neurons. Think of your nerves as electrical wires. They send signals from your brain to your muscles using tiny electrical pulses. Sodium channels are the gates that allow these pulses to travel. The toxin doesn't destroy these channels. It locks them open. Your nerves start firing uncontrollably. The first stage hits within minutes. A metallic taste in the mouth, numbness in the extremities. The fingers and toes go cold. Most people think they're having an anxiety attack. Then comes stage 2, muscle spasms, violent, uncontrollable convulsions. The diaphragm begins to spasm erratically. Victims gasp for air that won't come. Their heart rate accelerates: 180, 200, 220 beats per minute. Stage 3 is the most insidious. The blood-brain barrier begins to break down. Fluid leaks into the brain tissue. The skull can't expand. As the brain swells, it presses against the bone. Pressure builds. Blood vessels burst. And then silence. Death occurs between 24 and 72 hours after exposure. Bruce Lee, at 135 pounds, with virtually zero body fat, would have been particularly vulnerable. And here's the terrifying part. There is no antidote. Not in 1972. Not today. But the poison has one weakness. It must enter the bloodstream directly. A scratch, a pinprick, even a thorn pressed into the skin. The assassin needed to get close to Bruce Lee, close enough to touch him. On June 14th, 1972, that's exactly what he tried to do. Chuck Norris had trained his entire life to react in milliseconds. Tournament point fighting demands it. But here's what makes the moment truly remarkable. Chuck wasn't even supposed to be there. The shooting schedule had Chuck arriving at 2 p.m., but Chuck had woken up early with an inexplicable sense of dread. Years later, he described it as a voice telling me to go to the Coliseum immediately. He arrived at 11:30 a.m., and there at the edge of the arena stood a man Chuck had never seen before, wearing the standard production assistant uniform, holding a rolled-up script. Chuck watched him. The man moved wrong, too focused, too intent. He was tracking Bruce. When Bruce moved left, the man adjusted his position. Then the opportunity came. Bruce stepped toward the water cooler, alone. The man followed. 10 feet, 8 feet, 5 feet. His hand went into his pocket. When it emerged, there was something between his fingers, a needle. Chuck didn't think. He moved. 20 feet in 3 strides. His hand shot out, grabbing the man's wrist, just as the needle was inches from Bruce's shoulder. The needle fell. It shattered on the ancient stone, the dark liquid spreading like ink. Bruce turned around. He saw Chuck holding the man's wrist. He saw the shattered needle, and in that moment, Bruce understood everything. The man ran into the deeper corridors of the Coliseum. He was never seen again. That evening, after the police found nothing, Bruce and Chuck sat alone in the empty arena. That's when Bruce told him the truth about the shadow dragons, about the death sentence, about the poison. And that's when Bruce made his offer. What happened next was never filmed. According to a handwritten letter discovered in Chuck Norris's archives in 2019, a letter addressed to his wife, but never sent, Bruce Lee made Chuck an offer that would bind them forever. The letter, dated June 16, 1972, is written on hotel stationery. Forensic analysis confirmed it was written by Chuck Norris. Quote, Bruce looked at me with those eyes, and he said, "You saved my life today. In my culture, that creates a debt I can never repay, but I can give you something, a gift and a burden." Bruce pulled out a medallion, small jade, hanging from a worn leather cord. Carved into its surface was a dragon coiled around a sword. This was the symbol of the shadow dragons, the sigil of leadership. Bruce was giving Chuck his place, his title, his target. "I'm giving you my place," Bruce said. "If they can't kill me, they'll eventually realize they need to kill you. But you're American. You're outside their reach. You're untouchable in ways I never was." Chuck tried to refuse, but Bruce cut him off. "You need to be so visible, so successful, so impossible to ignore, that everyone forgets about Bruce Lee the man and remembers only Bruce Lee the legend. And legends can't be killed." But there was one more part to the ritual. Bruce pulled a knife from his pocket, a ceremonial blade with a handle carved from bone. When you save someone's life, their life becomes part of yours. When you share blood, you share destiny. This is a bond that doesn't break. Bruce made a shallow cut across his palm. Blood welled up. He extended the bleeding hand to Chuck. "If I die, you will carry the legend. You will become unkillable, unbeatable. The world will speak my name, but they will fear yours. You will be the myth I could never become." Chuck took the knife. He cut his own palm. The two men clasped hands, blood mixing between their fingers. "I promise," Chuck said. "If you fall, I'll stand. If you're forgotten, I'll be remembered. If you die, your legend lives." Bruce smiled. "Something sad, good, because in exactly 1 year, I'm going to die. And when I do, everything changes." 1 year later, Bruce Lee was dead. July 20th, 1973. Officially, cerebral edema, caused by a reaction to the painkiller Equigis, a tragic accident. Case closed. But here's the twist. The twist that changes everything we thought we knew. Bruce Lee didn't die in 1973. He faked his death. According to a retired CIA operative who spoke to underground martial arts journalist Marcus Chen in 2003, an interview that was later scrubbed from the internet, Bruce Lee had been working with American intelligence since 1971. His mission? To infiltrate Chinese organized crime syndicates operating in Hong Kong and Southeast Asia. But when the Shadow Dragons discovered Lee's cooperation with Western intelligence, they escalated the assassination order. Bruce Lee had no choice. He had to disappear. Completely. And the only way to disappear when you're the most famous martial artist in the world, you die. But death is only convincing if someone takes your place. If someone carries on your legacy so publicly, so loudly, that no one questions whether you're really gone. Enter Chuck Norris, the man who would become immortal. From 1973 onward, Chuck Norris became a cultural phenomenon. But it wasn't just his movies. It was something else. Something intangible. The internet age gave it a name. Chuck Norris facts. Chuck Norris doesn't do push-ups. He pushes the earth down. Chuck Norris can divide by zero. Death once had a near Chuck Norris experience. The jokes became legend. The legend became mythology. And mythology became something stranger. Chuck Norris wasn't just tough. He was unkillable, ageless, eternal. But what if the jokes weren't jokes? What if they were coverage? Think about it. When was the last time you saw Chuck Norris lose? When was the last time you saw him truly vulnerable? Even in his worst movies, Chuck Norris wins. Always. Without exception. It's not bad writing. It's protocol. According to the conspiracy theory, and yes, we're deep in theory now, the Blood Pact wasn't symbolic, it was operational. Bruce Lee, from the shadows, fed Chuck Norris intelligence, strategies, techniques. Every major fight scene Chuck performed, every impossible stunt, all of it was choreographed by the real Bruce Lee, operating through intermediaries. The theory claims Bruce Lee lived in hiding until at least the early 1990s, moving between safe houses in Thailand, the Philippines, and rural China. His purpose? To ensure the legend survived. Because if the legend survived, the Shadow Dragons could never claim victory. But if Bruce was alive, orchestrating everything from the shadows, then something happened in 1993. Something that forced the hidden war into the open. One final time. Something that cost him his son. March 31st, 1993. Wilmington, North Carolina. Brandon Lee, Bruce Lee's only son, is filming The Crow. During a shooting scene, a prop gun misfires. A bullet fragment strikes Brandon in the abdomen. He dies hours later. He was 28 years old, the same age his father was when he filmed Way of the Dragon. The official investigation: tragic accident. A dummy round had been improperly cleared from the gun. When the blank fired, it propelled the stuck bullet at lethal velocity. Case closed. But 3 days before the shooting, Brandon received a package at his hotel. No return address. Inside was a jade medallion on a leather cord. Not the dragon coiled around a sword. This dragon was eating its own tail, an Ouroboros, the symbol of an unbreakable cycle, a debt that passes from generation to generation. Brandon showed it to his fiancée, Eliza Hutton. She later told investigators that Brandon had gone pale. He said it was a message, Eliza recalled. He said someone was telling him that his father's promise was coming due. After Brandon's death, when police inventoried his hotel room, the medallion was gone. No one had been in the room except Eliza and the police. Someone else had taken it. Someone who wanted to remove the evidence. A firearms expert named Martin Fackler reviewed the autopsy report years later. He stated on record, "The wound pattern is inconsistent with a bullet propelled solely by blank powder. For this depth of penetration, the projectile would need significantly more velocity than a blank can produce." His conclusion: that wasn't an accident. But here's the most disturbing part. In 1991, 2 years before his death, Brandon gave an interview to a Hong Kong magazine. He said something strange. "Have you ever felt like you inherited a debt you didn't agree to? My father left me more than a legacy. He left me a shadow I can't escape. And then there are people who believe my father didn't really die, that he's still out there somewhere. And if that's true, then I'm the proof he failed. I'm the evidence that he was mortal. And that makes me complicated for everyone involved." Brandon Lee knew he was being hunted, and Chuck Norris knew it too. A stunt coordinator named Jeff Imada recalled a conversation he overheard in 1991. Brandon and Chuck were at a martial arts expo in Las Vegas. Imada heard Chuck say, "You need to be more careful. You're drawing attention." Brandon responded, "I'm not hiding. If they want me, let them come." Chuck grabbed Brandon's arm. "That's not how this works. You're not protected the way you think you are." Brandon pulled away. Then maybe it's time everyone knew the truth. 2 years later, Brandon was dead, and Chuck Norris never spoke about him again. So what's the truth? Did Bruce Lee really fake his death? Did the Shadow Dragons kill his son to punish him? Is Chuck Norris really carrying the weight of 2 deaths on his conscience? Here's what we know for certain. Bruce Lee died on July 20th, 1973. Brandon Lee died on March 31st, 1993. Both deaths were ruled accidental. Both investigations were closed without suspects. We also know that Chuck Norris has never publicly commented on the Blood Pact theory. In interviews, when asked about Bruce Lee, Chuck speaks with reverence, with grief, with something that looks a lot like guilt. But there's one detail, one tiny nagging detail, that refuses to go away. That moment, the chest hair. Everyone who was on set that day says the same thing. It wasn't in the script. Bruce just did it, spontaneously. And Chuck's reaction, the shock, the pain, the sudden understanding in his eyes, that wasn't acting. What did Bruce whisper to him right before that moment? The microphones didn't pick it up, but in one bootleg copy of the raw footage that disappeared from the Hong Kong Film Archives in 1995, you can see Chuck Norris mouth 2 words back to Bruce: "I promise." The Blood Pact, the Shadow Dragons, the deaths of both Bruce and Brandon Lee, the immortal myth of Chuck Norris. Maybe it's all true. Maybe it's all fantasy. But one thing is undeniable. Some legends are too powerful to die, and some debts are paid in blood across generations. If you want to go deeper into the hidden history of martial arts, check out our next investigation. Link in the description. Until then, keep questioning, keep searching, and remember, the truth is always stranger than the legend.